Good fences make good neighbors. I love Robert Frost's poem, Mending Walls, because it's like a parable. It has a lesson to it, but it's not communicated straightforwardly. Instead, Frost makes us question and reflect. Good fences make good neighbors is the motto of the neighbor in Frost's poem, and it also seems to be a popular motto throughout human history. When in fear, when threatened by difference, when feeling the need to assert power, build a wall. The more solid, impermeable, and rigidly enforced, the better. Walls are ubiquitous. We build them around homes and neighborhoods and between regions and countries. Sometimes these walls are invisible, such as those that exist between different cultures, races, religions, and political groups. The poet says, "Before I build a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out." Walls are usually built for the sake of protecting those who are walled in or excluding those who are walled out. They're physical barriers to movement, intermingling, and some say it is this which makes good neighbors, separate and defined. And yet, something there is that doesn't love a wall. These words from our poem make me think of DIY home renovation enthusiasts. Have you ever watched those TV shows? The homeowner's favorite day is day one, demo day, when they get to gleefully take a sledgehammer to their walls, tearing them down in pursuit of an open concept home. So whether it's the home renovators, the forces of nature, hunters, or activists, something, always something, conspires that the wall might fall. And yet people continue to mend walls. It reminds me of Sisyphus, the figure in Greek mythology with the unenviable task of perpetually pushing a boulder up a hill only to have it roll back down again. The neighbors on either side of the wall are perpetually mending the wall, only to have the stones tumble down over and over again. Perhaps the problem isn't the existence of walls in our society, but rather the nature of them. The problem is rigid, impermeable walls that exclude, that serve as barriers to understanding, to empathy, and to seeing the divine in other people and places. It's the illusion of separation and the failure to recognize our interdependence that has led to the construction of walls throughout history. Many of these walls, both visible and invisible, are arbitrarily drawn, without regard for families, tribes, humanity, and the complexity of our identities. This past week was the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, which divided Germany's largest city for 28 years. A large, imposing concrete wall, it isolated east from west, cut through neighborhoods and divided streets, separating families and former neighbors. It was constructed by the government of East Germany, who claimed that the wall would protect the power of the communist Eastern Bloc and protect residents of East Berlin from threats to the will of the people. The walls also prevented people in East Germany from fleeing to West Germany, or to West Berlin, which was moving towards capitalism, and limited the influence of the West on the East. The Berlin Wall finally fell on November 9th, 1989, and came down gradually over the following months and years. People rejoiced in the streets and celebrated the hope of unification and a turning point in global politics. Now, for many people in this room, the rise and the fall of the Berlin Wall is as much a life-defining historical moment as maybe the 9/11 attacks were for the next generation. But regardless of our age or generation, I think there's something that we can learn from this time in history, this incredibly powerful symbol of the Cold War. At first, the Berlin Wall wasn't much of a barrier at all. People jumped over it, dug under it, and managed to get around and through it in various ways. But as time went by, it became more solid. A barbed wire fence was replaced with a concrete wall, and as time went by, enforcement of the barrier became more violent. People who tried to cross were taken down with machine gun fire. It became an impermeable barrier enforced by government power. It wasn't until 1989 that the Berlin Wall was breached, once the guards stopped shooting people. It was the determination of human beings that brought the wall down. But it wasn't as simple as that. A member of this congregation who I talked with recently told me that when she visited in 1990, even though the wall had technically fallen, there were still guards who still insisted on checking passports because they hadn't been told not to do so. They were still mending that wall, but not for too much longer. Something there is that doesn't love a wall. Walls are fleeting, but the human spirit and our interdependence are stronger. The Berlin Wall is a political example, but I bring it up today because we all deal with boundaries of the personal and interpersonal kind. We seek the solace and safety of sanctuaries in a variety of ways, and we strive to live compassionately in ways that transcend barriers and walls. So how do we navigate all of this? Has anyone ever told you or given you the advice that you need to develop thick skin? What they're saying really is that you need to develop a protective shell. It may be because of the line of work that you are in, or how your family is, or because the world is just a rough place to be in. Develop a thick skin so that as difficult situations or criticisms come your way, they won't pierce you. They will bounce off and you will remain unaffected. The problem with this advice is that instead of promoting self-differentiation as boundaries should, the advice is often given out of fear of others, of difference, or of relationships that may be challenging. The walls of living cells have a protective aspect, but every cell and every human body has permeable skin that allows a flow in and out in order to maintain its health. It's through this flow and exchange that we remain stable and grounded in a chaotic world while also allowing for growth and change. Only when walls become impermeable do things go downhill as health and vitality and relationship are compromised. Cell membranes are not closed off. They're porous, and they are constantly discerning what comes in and what goes out. The endocrinologist Hans Selye noted, "At first it seems odd that the laws governing life's responses at such different levels as a cell, a whole person, or even a nation should be so essentially similar." But perhaps it's not so odd as he says. This is how living things survive. A few years ago, in a discussion with some of my ministerial colleagues, someone suggested an alternative to thick skin. What if we aspired instead to have a solid core? The solid core is our sense of self, and the exterior is able to feel and discern and respond. Instead of being an off-putting barrier to relationship, our exterior invites relationship with the people and the world around us. I think that's more of how I want to live. I don't know about you. Sometimes people who put up a tough front are actually the most insecure. They put up imposing walls because they do not have a solid core. This is part of the dynamic of bullying. Those who are bullied, in turn, bully others. Perhaps this was at play in the building and enforcement of the Berlin Wall. Perhaps this is what the Frost poem is about. The poet's neighbor, without thinking about it for himself, really, continues to follow his father's old adage, good fences make good neighbors. Living with a solid core and soft walls allows us to connect with others, to feel with others, and to be more compassionate. It allows us to live how we were made to live, interdependently, with the awareness that our well-being is connected to others' well-being, and we can't live with vitality if we put up walls between us. So my invitation to all of us today is to reflect on the walls that you put up in your lives, and to consider how you might soften them, or even allow them to fall, focusing instead on that inner core, your safe place and grounding. This is what allows us to live in the world, connected with others and with the holy. See how that changes you. Some people build up walls in order to feel safe, often because they've been hurt in the past. But what if that core is our sanctuary rather than what we put up around us? When I hear the word sanctuary, I think of a line from a Billy Joel song. In every heart there is a room, a sanctuary safe and sound. Sanctuaries within and beyond ourselves are where we go to find renewal and healing. Sanctuaries are where many find God, in our hearts, in a church, in a community of people. Many theologians talk about God as the ground of our being. You might think about it as that core. So where are the sanctuaries in your life? Perhaps you have come to this sanctuary, seeking healing, grounding, and peace. We call this room a sanctuary. It has walls and a roof that enclose the space, but they do not define or limit who we are as a community and how far our reach extends. This sanctuary is permeable. People gather in and go forth. We're a vital community because we encourage the flow of diverse ideas to move within and throughout. We strive to be a church with a solid core, which allows us to have permeable walls that welcome the stranger and also help people to discern the right place for them. We are a sanctuary, safe and sound, and we acknowledge our interdependence with the world. The late Marjorie Bowens Wheatley, a Unitarian Universalist minister, once said, "The gap between rich and poor, between people of different class, ethnic, racial, and cultural backgrounds continues to carve walls of division between us. The way out, I believe," she says, "begins with remembering who we really are and why we are here. That we are spiritual beings, connected to something larger and more trustworthy than ourselves or the differences that divide us." It's important to remember that we are part of something larger that cannot be divided by walls even of our own making. Something there is that doesn't love a wall and conspires for it to fall. Edwin Markham, an early 20th century Universalist, wrote a short poem entitled "Outwitted." "He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in." In our year of living compassion here at this church, we are learning and practicing how to live compassionately in ways that transcend walls and draw the circle wider. This month's story, which we introduced last Sunday, and which we hope that you will engage throughout the month, is about the Buddha. He moved outside the protected life that he had within the palace walls, and he found spiritual enlightenment through encounters with the realities of life and death, suffering and wisdom, and the realization that we all share in these. And he went on to teach others how to live with more empathy and compassion. So as I've done in past months, I want to introduce the month's spiritual practice to you here on Sunday, because I think it can deepen our engagement with the month's theme of empathy. Just as Prince Siddhartha or the Buddha went outside the palace walls, we're encouraging you to be present outside the walls of your mind and your home. As you go about your days, walking, driving, at school or work, running errands, be mindful of the people around you. Are they happy? Are they suffering? We don't often notice these things as we rush about our lives. And so I wonder how, if we were to be mindful, it might change how we feel, what we see in the people around us, and how we relate to them. The practice for the month, in addition to being mindful, is to meditate on those people that you encounter. To imagine yourself at the center of a series of concentric circles. Family and friends, acquaintances and people you encounter, and strangers and people who you will never meet. And to go step by step outward from one circle to another, imagining these people with you and being aware of your feelings towards them. Think about their good points and notice their pain and their suffering. This is what empathy is all about. And then wish for these people the same joy and love you wish for yourself. What are the ways also that we can translate these thoughts into small, concrete acts of compassion? I think there are many possibilities. We can't do this, though, if we are building and mending walls between us, or if we maintain thick skin. We do this out of a strong sanctuary within, reaching out to the beyond. May it be so. Amen.